Hi everybody out there. I'm Tab, in case we haven't met yet. I can't wait until we have an opportunity where we can do this in person, but for now, I guess this is the best we can do. So here we go. So welcome to art journaling. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for being here. We're going to go through 8 good for the soul single page art journal designs that I have come up with that will hopefully bring some kind of peace and serenity to your life in this crazy time that we are living right now. My little experiment called art journaling for the soul. Thank you again for being here. I am super happy to be sharing these things with you, and I hope that you enjoy it. Hi guys, welcome back. We're going to do an art journal page tonight on gratitude. So I find that, being grateful for what I have going on is a real struggle for me sometimes, especially these days. So it's, they say it's healthy and everything. So I thought I'll give it a shot and maybe my outlook on things will be a little bit better after, completing this page. So I wanted to, dedicate an evening to that, especially since we are, the timing of this video will come out right before Thanksgiving. So what better time to be grateful for everything that you do have in life right now. You'll need your watercolors. You're going to need your watercolor brush. Watercolor brushes are the super soft ones, and it probably came, your watercolor pan probably came with one. If not, and all you have is acrylic brushes will work just as fine as watercolor brushes, except they just don't hold as much water. So you're going to want to open up your book to a blank page. And again, if you are a fan of the wax paper, you can of course put your wax paper in there to protect your pages underneath. Okay, and so for your watercolors, remember that for using them, you're going to want to make sure that you are getting them nice and wet. Now, I guess goal here for this page is we're going to be creating a tree. So we're going to start with a sky color, and then we'll kind of change into some kind of like landscape colors at the bottom to set up the scene for putting our gratitude tree in the scene. So I'm going to start at the top with a blue for a sky of some kind. So I'm going to need to, make sure that I really douse this blue color with lots of water to activate it. I've got a few different blues, so if I wanted to combine them somehow, I could do that. But I want to make sure that they're both pretty wet. Okay, so for the sky part, I do want to do kind of a graded wash. So I'll show you guys the technique for that. What you'll want to do is, first of all, choose the whichever blue you're going to choose. Just make sure that you're really getting a lot of it into your brush. And so the graded wash is one that fades from in intensity from the top to the bottom, or from the side to the other side. So for watercolors, a lot of people hate these brushes because they're so floppy when they're wet. And that's, yes, I agree. They're kind of frustrating that way, but they are natural hairs, so that's kind of why they are like that. So you just kind of have to get used to the floppiness of them. Watercolors, however, are designed to, since you're adding so much water to them, they're designed to keep moving as long as the paper is wet. So as I get down into this wash that I'm trying to make, and I want to start letting it fade, so I'm going to need to rinse my brush. Okay, so rinse it out completely, get some nice clear water in there, and then when you want it to fade, I just want to start with my clear water a little bit below where my dark blue was, and I'm going to creep my way up to that edge. And so as soon as I touch that edge, that paint is going to start creeping down into this next area, and it will do this natural fade. As long as I keep rinsing my brush and coming down further and sneaking my way up to that wet area, it's going to keep on creeping down. As long as it is able to get to a wet area on the paper, it's going to keep on creeping. So to smooth this out, because it is it's really kind of cool looking where it looks like it's almost raining, I can keep going back and forth to kind of smooth things out a little bit here, and I'm going to creep my way up to the top very slowly, and I'm going to keep going just from left to right, and I'm picking up my brush left to right. Every once in a while I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to start back at the bottom. I'm going to go left to right, creeping up into my blue, okay, until I can activate that blue. Okay, the floppy brush is starting to misbehave. It's like the shape of a candy cane right now. It's kind of annoying, but you'll want to just keep doing that. So you can, the nice thing about watercolor is that you can actually set your book up, and you can just kind of like let it sit there, and you can let it start to fade down if you want. If you need more intensity at the top, you can kind of start all over at the top. So if I want to load my brush again with that blue, I can start at the top and I can creep my way down. So I'm going left to right or right to left, just keep the direction whatever's comfortable, and I can start creeping down into this area a little bit further. And keep in mind, you guys, that this is a mixed media paper. It's not watercolor paper, so it is going to ripple on you, and so please do not expect perfection in this technique. Watercolor paper is much thicker, and it will actually hold a lot more water than this mixed media paper can. But we're going to do our best to make this fade. Okay, so again, if I want to bring this fade down even further, I'm starting with clear water. I'm creeping up to that ridge until it kind of catches and allows that watercolor to start creeping in. Okay, so now I'm going to get some green or brown or a combination of the two on my brush here, and I'm going to also again go from dark to light. So I'm going to set my hill. I'm just going to do like a little hill, and then it's going to be darker green on the top, and then it's going to fade down to lighter green as it gets closer. Or you can brighten it with a brighter green, like more yellow in it or something. So I might start with a green that's more dark, and then I might add some brown to it just to dull it, because really atmospheric perspective tells us that things that are farther away from us should be more dull and less detailed. So we do want our green in the way back to be kind of dull. So I'm going to kind of brown it up a little bit here. I'm really muddying up all my watercolor pans here. But I want to just kind of do something really simple from left to right, and just, you know, do like a little hill. Okay, so I can start to kind of come down with my green, And I am going to kind of brighten it up with this more yellowish green near the bottom. So the fade in this one, it doesn't really matter as much, but we do want to do this plastic wrap technique. So you do want to do this kind of quickly and don't let anything dry before you get that plastic wrap on there. So don't be too picky about your fade. Just get color on the page and act kind of quickly here with the plastic wrap before it dries on you. Okay, so before it's dry, I need some plastic wrap. So I'm going to cut off a piece of my roll here, and I'm just going to take this and I'm going to crunch it up and I'm going to place it right on my wet watercolor, and I'm going to let this kind of create a bunch of fun shapes in my watercolor, and that's just going to be the watercolor technique just for texture. Okay, so it's going to be a visual texture, and so once this is totally dry, then you can take the plastic wrap off. Okay, so we're back, and that took about, I don't know, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so for that to dry. So I just took my plastic wrap off, and these are the shapes that were left from the plastic wrap. So it's kind of a fun, way to create texture in your page. And you can do this also with acrylic if you do water down your acrylic enough to be like watercolor. So lay that plastic wrap over there, let it dry, and then once it's dry, peel it off to reveal the magical shapes that it has left for you. So we're going to do the tree part next, and I'm going to switch over to acrylics just because acrylics are able to be more opaque and cover up things that are behind them. I am going to grab an old plate that I used from a previous page, and I'm going to go ahead and add my main color, which is going to be brown for my tree. I'm going to also add a touch of black for, wow, that happened really fast, for the shadow side, and then I'll add a little bit of white for if I want to do a highlight side. So you got to have the highlights and shadows on stuff, so I'm going to be talking about that. And I'm going to use a round brush for this just because I do want to keep that linear kind of texture. I'm going to get my brush wet before I dip it into any paint, and here's my take on painting trees. They're one of my favorite things to paint because a tree is a tree is a tree, okay? And as long as it is abiding by a few very simple rules, your tree will be a successful painting, okay? So, A, the tree must be the thickest at the trunk and the thinnest at the very edge of the branch, and it gradually thickens as it gets to that trunk. So as long as you don't have any really thick parts that then get thin again on the branch, it's going to make sense, okay? The second rule that I try to stick to is branches generally will not make any kind of angle that is even close to 90 degrees. So as long as you keep it less than 90 degrees, let's say 45 degrees, that's perfect. Try to stick to less than 90 degree angles for your tree branches, and then just make sure that it is gradually getting smaller and smaller as it gets down to the edge of the branch. So keeping your brush pointy is going to be really important, because the pointier it is and the lighter your touch, the smaller your branch can get on the end. So whatever your tree ends up looking like, we need one main branch that's coming off into the main area of our page here, so that we can hang all of our little love notes that are denoting kind of all of the things that we are grateful for having in our lives. So I'm going to go ahead and start with taking my brown, and I'm not going to water down the whole thing of brown because then I would have this lake of brown paint. I'm going to just take a little brown to the side, and I'm going to water that down to be kind of thin. I don't want it watercolor thin because I want this to be able to cover up my land and my sky here. That was the whole point of switching to acrylic. So I do want to keep it kind of thick, but manageable, okay? Manageable in the way that if I twist my brush in my paint here, I can still come away with a fairly pointy tip, okay? You don't want to try to make a tree with a big old glob on the end of your brush like this. It's not going to do you any good. So thin it out, roll it, and twist it on your plate so that as you bring it away, you have some kind of point that you can deal with. Okay, so I'm just going to start at the bottom here, on the bottom right, and I'm just going to kind of come up, and just as I get past the grass, I'm going to go ahead and reload. I'm going to go ahead and start to branch off to the left. Okay, and I just need one single branch that reaches all the way across my page, because this is what's going to have the little things hung from it. The rest of the branches, however, they can do whatever you want. You can have one go straight up. I can have some branches coming off of that. Okay, so again, I'm keeping all of my angles less than 90 degrees and more close to 45 degrees if you can manage that. So I can have some branch offs however I feel like having my branch offs. So here's the part where you're going to start thickening up. So you're going to have to take a look at the very end of the longest branch, and that is the thinnest, right, that it can be. So now I have to head back towards my trunk, and I'm just going to start thickening it up until I get to my trunk, and my trunk is going to be the fattest part. Okay, so I've just started to kind of like separate away from my original line there, and I'm just making it thicker and thicker and thicker until I get down to the trunk. And the trunk can be 2 inches thick if it has to be. It doesn't matter, as long as it's abiding by that rule that it's getting thicker and thicker and thicker as it goes down to the ground. Okay, so again, looking at this branch, that's the thickest, or that's the thinnest it can be, so it has to get thicker from there on. The amount of branches is not really important, but have fun with this. Like if you want to just kind of like try out some things, like some really crooked fun branches, go for it. Another fun thing that I like to do with branches sometimes is just kind of play with, you know, how they curl, right? So they might curl around, and you can do like a whole like Nightmare Before Christmas kind of vibe, and you know, really have like some branches that kind of curl down and really kind of like square off into like these creepy little branches and stuff. So make your tree whatever you want it to be. Give it some personality, give it like some fun little bumps and lumps every once in a while, you know, because like sometimes when a tree gets trimmed, it has that little like shoulda coulda been a branch type thing right there. So put little nubs in it every once in a while just to give it some personality. Okay, so when you've got your tree kind of formed, you're gonna have to pick a highlight side and a shadow side. So for the highlight side, I'll do that first. I'm gonna just take some white on my plate, and generally, most of the time, the brown that's already in my brush will make a nice tint color, but if you need to add more to it, you can. But we just want like a lighter version of the brown to kind of be placed on the left or the right side. So I'm going to pick left side for highlights, right side for shadows. So I'm just going to kind of come in here on the left side as I travel across and up my tree here, and I'm just going to make these short little lines, and it's going to those lines are going to follow the tree all the way up. So I'm just kind of hitting the left sides of all of these branches, and I'm keeping them very straight but short lines. So I'm going to take my brush, rinse it out, and now I'm going to make my shadow color by taking my brown and adding a little black to make it darker. Okay, so I'm going to put the dark stuff on the right side. So on the right side, I'm just going to do the same thing. So I'm just taking little short lines, and I'm just going to travel up and go to the right side of each of my branches. So my tree, It is perfectly imperfect, and I love it. Okay, so my tree is dry. I'm going to start putting my things that I feel grateful for onto my page. They're going to be hanging from these branches here. Okay, so they can kind of start out by floating in the air, and then we're going to connect them with a little string. So it's best to just create, like write the word. We're going to draw a heart around it, okay, and then we'll connect it to the branch. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start painting these in. Now we need to get our strings on there, and I want them to be straight, obviously, so we want to make sure that everything is, you know, kind of lined up. So I'm going to find something that will help me draw a straight edge. I think I'll take the edge of like a stencil. So I'm going to do this in pencil first, just to make sure that it looks right. So I'm just going to make sure that it's like the line is going to be parallel to the edge of my paper. I don't want to do all these lines and then realize they're all slightly crooked. So try to match it up to the edge of your paper, and then I'm just going to kind of draw a line from the middle of that heart all the way up to the tree branch. And you know, don't draw it through another heart, like dip it behind the other heart. Like skip it so that it's like, it looks like it's behind it. Just check it every once in a while and make sure that they're all pretty parallel. So now that I've got those in there and I know that they're straight and they look good, I'm going to go ahead and go over it with Sharpie. So you can continue all the way through your branch, and then we can tie a little bow at the top. And my little bow is just basically 2 little loops. Okay, so it's like that. So I'm just tying little loops here. So those are the things that I am most grateful for. This is my gratitude tree. So now I'm just going to put some music on, and I'm going to finish out all of my little details.